Before the beginning, before the green earth had hardened beneath our feet or the stars had been strung across the velvet dark, there was only the unseen. And it is there, in the silent shadowlands, that we find the first truth of existence, that everything which lives must eventually bend the knee to the dust. We tell stories to keep the dark at bay, but the Greeks, possessed of a terrible clarity, told a story to explain the dark itself. They did not shy away from the end. They gave the world a ruler of the Diada, a god who was not a devil, but a judge, a god who sat upon a throne of ebony, holding the keys to the final door. This is the myth of Hades, the lord of the underworld, and the iron laws that bind us all. To understand the King of Shadows, you must first imagine the world as the ancient Greeks saw it, a vast, terrifying family drama writ large in fire and stone. The cosmos was torn by war. The titan Cronus, fearing his own children, devoured them whole, until his son Zeus escaped to wage a rebellion against the sky. The earth shook, the mountains cracked, oceans boiled away into steam. It was the Titanomachy, the war of the gods, and when the dust settled, the three sons of Cronus drew lots for the spoils of creation. Poseidon, the earth shaker, claimed the sea. Zeus, the thunder-bearer, claimed the sky. And Hades, the eldest, received the third, the darkest, the most permanent realm, the underworld. There was no trickery in this division, though later poets would paint him as a villain. Hades did not lose. He simply received his inheritance. His name meant the unseen one, and he was content to be the unseen anchor of the universe, holding the balance of life and death. He was not death itself, that was Thanatos, a mere messenger. Hades was the architect of the afterlife, the warden of the secrets beneath the soil. Deep below the roots of Mount Olympus, past the grove of black poplars, lies the house of Hades. It is a place of iron gates and silver walls, echoing with the lamentations of lost souls. Here, Hades ruled not with a whip, but with a gavel. He was the god of the hidden wealth of the gold and silver mined from the earth, and the fertile soil required for the harvest. He was also the god of oaths and curses, for words spoken in the dark are binding. But above all, he was the guardian of order. When a soul descends, it is stripped of rank, of beauty, of wealth. The king and the beggar stand side by side before the dread throne. To Hades, all are equal in death. This was the first rule of the dead. Fate is the ultimate democracy. Yet, even a god of the dead is not immune to the oldest, sharpest arrow in the quiver of existence. The myth tells of a time when Hades sat upon his obsidian throne, attended by the spirits of the dead, but utterly alone in his dominion. He possessed the keys to the cosmos, but he lacked a companion. It is a strange and terrifying thing to imagine the Lord of the Dead feeling the sting of loneliness, but the myths are rarely kind to the gods. High above, on the sun-drenched meadows of Nyssa, a maiden walked. Persephone, the Kore, the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest. Her laughter was said to cause flowers to bloom. Her footsteps turned the grass to emerald. She was the embodiment of the spring, the vibrancy of the living world. And Hades, watching from the shadows, saw her and desired her not with the violence of a monster, but with the ache of an immortal heart frozen in a kingdom of ice. He went to his brother Zeus. He asked for the Medina-S hand. Zeus, perhaps fearing the imbalance of the realms, or perhaps simply indifferent, gave his consent to a silent nod sealed in the air. And so Hades devised a plan. Persephone was dancing with her maidens by the lake, gathering Narcissus and Crocus. Suddenly, the earth began to tremble. The grass beneath her feet tore open, revealing a chasm that spiraled down into the abyss. Up from the darkness burst a chariot of gold and iron, drawn by immortal black steeds with eyes of fire. Hades leaned forward, his visage dark as a storm cloud, and in a single, sweeping motion, caught the screaming maiden in his arms. The earth snapped shut behind them. The meadow was empty. The only sound was the wind through the flowers, suddenly terrified. The abduction shattered the peace of the world. Demeter, robed in gold, heard her daughter's cry fade into the earth. The grief that struck her was a physical wound to the planet. She wandered the earth, disguising herself as an old woman, weeping rivers of tears. In her rage and sorrow, she withdrew her blessing from the land. She made the winter. The crops withered in the fields. The leaves fell from the trees. The earth grew hard and cold, and for the first time, humanity knew hunger. The world was dying because the dead had taken the living. Hades, meanwhile, had returned to his realm. He offered Persephone a throne beside him, a pomegranate of ruby-red seeds, and the honor of being the queen of the dead. It is said that he loved her in his distant, cold way, wanting to elevate her to a power equal to his own. But Persephone refused the food of the dead. She sat in the hall of Hades, pale and silent, refusing to eat, refusing to become one of them. The underworld is a place of law. If one does not eat, one does not belong. She remained a prisoner, but a prisoner who was not yet lost. Above, the famine grew so severe that Zeus could no longer ignore the dying pleas of mankind. The order of the cosmos was breaking. If humanity died out, who would offer sacrifices? He sent the messenger Hermes, the guide of souls, down into the pit to negotiate the release of the girl. Hermes flew through the misty caverns, past the watchful Cerberus, the three-headed hound who guarded the gate. He found Hades upon his throne. "Lord of the dead," Hermes said, his voice echoing in the vast hall. "Zeus commands that you return the maiden. The earth withers. The order is broken." Hades looked at the girl, and a cunning light entered his eyes. He knew the laws. He knew he could not keep her if Zeus commanded her release, but he also knew a loophole. He stood, his shadow falling over Persephone. "She may go," he said, his voice like grinding stones. "But first, she must prove she has not accepted the hospitality of the dead. Has she eaten of my food?" Persephone, thinking of her escape, turned to the messenger. "I have not," she said truthfully, but her eyes betrayed her. She had forgotten a moment, a lapse in her vigilance. A gardener in the court had seen her pluck a single seed from a pomegranate. She had eaten just 6 or 7 seeds. Hades smiled, a rare and terrifying expression. "You have eaten the food of the dead. You are bound to this realm." A compromise was struck, the kind of compromise that only gods can make, one that explains the very turning of our seasons. Persephone would return to her mother, but for every seed she ate, she must ascend back to the underworld for 1 month. 6 seeds, 6 months, and so was decreed. When Persephone ascends, the earth rejoices. Demeter embraces her daughter. The flowers bloom, the wheat rises tall, and the world is bathed in the golden light of spring and summer. But when the time comes, when the gate opens once more, Persephone must ascend. She becomes the Iron Queen, the dread Persephone, mistress of the shrieking ghosts. And as she leaves, her mother mourns, and the earth falls into the cold sleep of autumn and winter. To the ancient Greeks, this was not just a story about the weather. It was a story about